Good morning, Jennifer speaking. Hey, how are ya? Doing good. Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was just on the phone with someone else. Straight to voicemail? Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have any of the other, what do you call the call waiting and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Strength in democracy. Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I guess to start off, I felt disgusted and not comfortable with the platforms or the way the main three big parties did business. I'm actually a former card-holding member of the NDP, but quit 2011 to 2012. I knew that I was interested in politics and wanted to somehow get involved in politics for this federal election. I even considered running as an independent, but then I decided I would literally go to Elections Canada's website, make a list of every single political party that had registered, and in fact there were 22 parties that planned to run at least one candidate. So I went through each and every one of their websites and read what they all had to say, and Strength and Democracy is one that really stood out to me as kind of a cutting edge new concept in terms of, I guess my biggest issue and concern is voter empathy. The fact that so many people are so turned off by government and politics that they don't pay attention, they don't vote, and they don't think their voice matters. And although the Strength and Democracy Party was launched by two Quebec MPs, I immediately felt that their vision and their ideas would be transferable and applicable here in Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as potentially all over the country. Yeah, I joined the NDP both provincially and federally. Right, it was during the campaign for the 2011 federal election, so you could say I sort of caught the orange wave and was buying into a lot of what Jack Layton was doing. Ultimately, my concerns with the party at the federal level specifically dealt with their handling of the Transgender Human Rights Bill C-279, and I felt that the party was not ultimately listening to the voice of transgender Canadians nationwide. They had their own agenda that involved working with gay and lesbian organizations only in Toronto and Ottawa, and they wanted to push through a bill, any bill, a flawed bill, just so they could say that they passed a bill. And I felt that Bill 279 was not sufficient. It was not best practice because it did not include the words gender expression, and because there was a caveat attached to the definition of gender identity. So I made it quite clear, as did many other trans folks across the country, that we did not support this bill, and they carried on anyways as if we didn't matter. So that was a major blow to me. Do you want to hear anything about my provincial NDP, or is that out of scope? Yeah, let's go with that. Okay. Ultimately, it did fall apart to the Senate, and that's a whole other concern and challenge I think we all face is what do we do with this Senate? Is it working? Is it not working? How can we make the Senate better? Yes. Yeah, I filled out the application form to actually join the party. I think $10 gets you a lifetime membership, so that's very reasonable. And I also sent an email into them saying, basically offering up my resume, my experiences, told them a little bit about myself, that I ran as a candidate in a municipal election a couple of years ago. I have several years experience in public policy, and that I'd love to do anything I can to help grow the party brand beyond Quebec, and that I might have a lot to offer here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I ended up having a phone call with a couple of the political staffers who are working for the two sitting MPs, and those discussions went very well. And then I had a phone call with Jean-Francois LaRose, and somehow it came up that it might be a great idea to run me as a candidate. And after talking a little bit about the pros and cons of that, we both kind of agreed that yes, me running as a candidate is probably the right thing to do, and a good step forward. They had just recently announced an Ontario candidate, Peterborough Tobin, and so the timing was great to be able to say we are looking to grow. We feel we are a national party that focuses on both giving people a voice in Ottawa without having interference from party leaders, and the fact that they want to focus on regional development. And that's why I chose the seat of Avalon here in Newfoundland and Labrador, because it's a region that is literally just outside of the big city of St. John's, and it's fastly growing. There's actually some urban sprawl in parts of the riding, but it's mostly still rural. And I think a lot of the towns kind of get forgotten and overlooked because they're so close to St. John's. Plus, there's been some issues with interference. Stephen Harper refused to allow Chess Crosby. That's out there. At this point, that would be correct. There's still lots of time for others to potentially come forward. There was only ever, that I'm aware of, one other case of a transgender candidate even attempting to run. There was the NDP actually had a nomination back in 2007, but between the time the nomination and the election, the candidate was annulled and thrown out of the party, so something went wrong there. So I guess technically I'm the second one to attempt to get onto a ballot, and I guess it'll become official when my name does go on the ballot. And, I guess it won't be official until I file all my paperwork. I haven't actually filed all the paperwork yet, but that absolutely. I mean, I've technically been acclaimed as the candidate for Strength and Democracy, so now it's just a matter of sorting out. I've got to sign the papers, then I got to get them to Quebec for the party people to sign it, and then we got to get them submitted. And plus, I'm waiting for the. I guess I want it to make a media blitz, shall we say? I want it to be a almost like a second launch of the campaign. It's been very tough to get mainstream media here in Newfoundland and Labrador to pay attention to me and take me seriously and take this party seriously. So any opportunity I can create to raise some attention, to get people talking and just learn about the party, and that's what I'm going to do. So even if I have to use publicity stunts, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that there's more visibility and more people get a chance to learn about the party and learn about me as a candidate. It was actually me that raised that question, and they did not see it as a problem at all, and we both kind of agree that it's a nice positive news story and a positive opportunity to be able to say that the first party to run a trans candidate is Strength and Democracy, and it demonstrates that this party is serious about being open-minded and inclusive of everybody. I believe right out of their website they say part of what we want to do is reach out to the disenfranchised and oppressed minorities, anyone who might feel excluded by the way the main three parties do business, and ultimately it seems to be a great fit. Ultimately they're business professionals, and they judged my suitability for candidacy based on my work experience and my education, and not based on my medical history or gender identity or anything like that. Yeah, for the initial early part of my campaign, I think it's important and helpful to raise that particular matter. I think it's important to recognize that trans people, a lot of us would never even have the opportunity to run as a candidate or even have our voice heard. And I think it's important for Canadians to realize that it could be done in other countries, and that even in Canada we still face a lot of challenges. I mean, I've lost jobs, I've had to pay for health care out of my own pocket, and we need to do a better job treating trans people fairly and equally. I also realize that being a trans person makes me a bit of a novelty, and it's going to perhaps bring in some additional media attention to my campaign and my candidacy. And again, any opportunity, if being trans helps me spread the news about what Strength and Democracy is trying to do, then I'm going to take advantage of it. But ultimately, once we get deeper into the campaign, I'm hoping it becomes less of an issue, and I want the focus to be, the main theme is kind of a grassroots approach. I'm going to be targeting demographics that traditionally perhaps feel left out or excluded. More than half of the riding lives in the suburban St. John's area, but I want to focus a lot of attention traveling around the riding and going to each little village, even if there's only 50 people there, and I want to meet them all, I want to talk to them. Secondly, I want them to tell me what the issues are, and I want them to tell me what they think the solutions are. ultimately it's going to be an educational thing for me as well. I want to find out what's going on all over the riding and do my best to ensure that the citizens get their voice put forward. I also want regional development is something that I also feel is very important. I want to make sure that larger towns such as Harbor Grace and Bay Roberts and Placentia get the attention they deserve at a federal level. Environment is definitely a critical issue, and I guess we need to find a balance between looking at oil as a major industry versus other options. I've also made it clear that even though I consider myself an animal lover, I feel the Newfoundland seal hunt is unfairly targeted by animal activists, extremists, shall we say. And unlike the Green Party, I do not want to shut down the seal hunt. I think it's important that it continues. And if anything, I think Canada should focus a little more attention on the way we treat other, like farm animals, poultry, chickens, pigs, cows, are thrown into these factory farms. We have regulations that say they're being treated humanely, but I'm not so sure I agree with that. Another priority is to find a way to get better collaborative efforts between the levels of government. For the past 10 years, we've seen difficult relationships between all of the prime ministers of Canada that we've had and all of the premiers of Newfoundland and Labrador. I also see challenges between municipal leaders. Mayors of the city of St. John's and Mount Pearl have had arguments and public spats. I'd like to find a way to get all three levels of government to come together and talk about common issues, ways we can work together to make the province a better place, especially as we see the growth in the urban sprawl outside of St. John's and into the riding of Avalon. We need to have some serious talks about infrastructure. All of a sudden we've got 3 times as many people and 3 times as many cars, but there's no roads for them to drive on. We've got a lot of residential areas outside of St. John's, but there's still not a lot of businesses, so there's a lot of people who live in Avalon commute. They have to work in St. John's, they have to shop in St. John's, they have to party in St. John's, and hence another reason I'd like to focus on bringing more attention to these newfound cities. Yeah. Yeah. Can I also throw one more comment at you that I think is relevant? The interference by both Justin Trudeau sticking his nose into the local riding association's business, along with Stephen Harper sticking his nose in, that's one of the major reasons I saw Strength and Democracy being a good fit for Avalon. Chess Crosby would have potentially been a great candidate, and I think there's a lot of upset conservative supporters. In fact, there's a lot of progressive conservatives, old school conservatives, that do not agree with anything Harper is doing. And the last thing they want to do is vote Liberal or NDP. So I've actually reached out to those people and say, here's an opportunity to have your voice heard, and we can literally recreate the values that you still hold, even if there's no party at the major level to do that. Great. Yeah, so will this be a web article or? Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much. All right, bye. Let's get off the phone, Jennifer. Hurry up! I gotta get it. I got an article to write. Yeah. That's a big one though. That was the Canadian Press. It was August 12th, by the way. Still, and it's Jennifer McCreath, and I'm still just getting awake here with a coffee. Canadian Press is huge because their articles, they get pushed out to every major and minor newspaper in the country, so it's pretty big. Anyways, there you go. Thanks for watching.